Custer played the press like a fiddle, but Mark Kellogg paid the tune in the Sioux conflicts. Embedded with the doomed 7th, he hailed the leader's genius while Lakota forces under Sitting Bull coiled for revenge at Little Bighorn. The charge crumbled into chaos. Kellogg vanished, resurfacing mutilated in a ditch, identified by boots alone. Frontier journalism's dark punchline: chase Custer's star, and it burns you into historical ash. Mark Kellogg's story kicks off in 1861, not with the thunder of cavalry charges, but with a quiet wedding bell in Wisconsin. At 29, he married Martha Robinson, stepping into what looked like a stable groove amid the nation's unraveling. The American Civil War raged on, splitting families and fortunes, yet Kellogg found his footing as assistant editor at the La Crosse Democrat newspaper. Picture him there, ink-stained fingers, drafting editorials while the couple welcomed 2 daughters into a world of cannon fire and conscription notices. It was the kind of domestic setup that buffered against the era's chaos, where headlines about Gettysburg might land on his desk before breakfast, blending personal milestones with the grind of frontier reporting. This phase mirrored countless lives disrupted by war, where journalism wasn't just a job but a lens on survival, turning Kellogg from a newcomer into a voice echoing local sentiments on union and division. As the Civil War dragged into its bloody close, Kellogg's role at the paper deepened, demanding he juggle family duties with the relentless churn of news. The daughters grew amid stories of battlefield horrors, their home a makeshift newsroom where telegraphs buzzed with dispatches from the front. Kellogg's assistant editor position paid modestly, enough to keep the household afloat in La Crosse, a river town buzzing with lumber mills and steamboat traffic. Yet, this stability masked the era's undercurrents, like economic slumps post-war that hit small papers hard. He crafted columns on Reconstruction policies, perhaps critiquing the government's fumbling grasp on peace, all while ensuring his girls had shoes and stories at bedtime. It's like today's gig economy, freelancers piecing together stability, except back then, one bad harvest or editorial feud could upend everything, forging in Kellogg a resilience that would later propel him westward. Then 1867 hit like a derailed locomotive. Kellogg dipped into politics, running for public office in a bid that flopped spectacularly, exposing him to the cutthroat world beyond newsprint. Voters rejected his platform, whatever mix of progressive ideas or local gripes it held, leaving him bruised in reputation and wallet. Worse followed. Martha, his anchor, died suddenly, shattering the family core. With grief as his shadow, he entrusted the daughters to an aunt's care, a pragmatic choice in an age without social safety nets. Drifting west became his escape, embodying the frontier stringer's life, hopping towns and peddling articles to whichever rag would pay. He'd file pieces on cattle drives or mining booms, scraping by on irregular checks, much like modern stringers chasing clicks in unstable markets. This nomadic grind honed his prose but eroded any illusions of security, turning personal loss into a catalyst for reinvention amid the vast, unforgiving plains. By the early 1870s, that drift led Kellogg to Bismarck, North Dakota, a raw boomtown sprouting along the Missouri River with railroads snaking in. Here, he landed as editorial assistant at the Bismarck Tribune, a step up from freelance scraps but still a hand-to-mouth existence. The job involved everything from typesetting to opinion pieces on territorial politics, while the daughters remained back east, their absence a constant ache he couldn't afford to mend. Bismarck pulsed with speculators and soldiers, foreshadowing the Indian War's tensions, yet Kellogg focused on local beats, building contacts that would later open doors to bigger stories. It's ironic, this setup. A man piecing together a career from ruins, unaware that the same ambition drawing him to the edge would soon pull him over it, into history's unforgiving spotlight. Kellogg's routine in Bismarck shifted gears when editor Clement A. Lounsbury caught wind of the military push brewing at Fort Abraham Lincoln. The 7th U.S. Cavalry, under George Armstrong Custer, geared up to confront the Sioux bands defying reservation orders, part of the broader U.S. effort to enforce treaties amid gold rushes in the Black Hills. Lounsbury, spotting a scoop in the making, tapped Kellogg to embed with the column, a move that bypassed the reporter's freelance struggles for something bigger. Custer, ever the showman, welcomed him aboard, knowing press coverage had polished his image from Civil War hero to national icon. This wasn't just journalism, it was mutual back, scratching in an era when headlines could make or break reputations, much like today's influencers courting viral moments, except here the stakes involved rifles and relocation policies gone awry. Kellogg, at this point, saw it as his ticket out of obscurity. packing his notebook for a campaign that promised action against Sitting Bull's holdouts. Despite orders from higher-ups like General Sherman to leave civilians behind, Custer bent the rules for Kellogg, a decision laced with irony given the commander's flair for publicity. The reporter's inclusion highlighted Custer's strategy of feeding the media beast to sustain his celebrity, a tactic that had turned previous expeditions into front-page fodder. As the column departed in May 1876, Kellogg settled into his role, sending back pieces that captured the march's rhythm, from dusty trails to supply wagons groaning under provisions. This opportunity marked a pivot from his Bismarck desk work, where local politics and railroad updates dominated, to the heart of a federal offensive against Lakota and Cheyenne alliances. It's like upgrading from local news tweets to embedded war correspondence, where every dispatch could echo across the country, amplifying both the sender and the subject. Kellogg's enthusiasm showed in his preparations, ensuring he had the tools to document what he viewed as a straightforward enforcement action, unaware of the cultural clash simmering beneath the military pomp. Kellogg hit the ground running as correspondent for the Bismarck Tribune and the prestigious New York Herald, outlets that paid well enough to justify the risks of frontier travel. His writings didn't hold back on lionizing Custer, portraying the lieutenant colonel as a force of nature in dispatches that read like fan letters crossed with battle reports. One piece stands out. And now a word for the most peculiar genius in the army, a man of strong impulses, of great-hearted friendships and bitter enmities, of quick nervous temperament, undaunted courage, will, and determination, a man possessing electrical mental capacity and of an iron frame and constitution, a brave, faithful, gallant soldier who has warm friends and bitter enemies, the hardest rider, the greatest pusher with the most untiring vigilance, overcoming seeming impossibilities and with an ambition to succeed in all things he undertakes, a man to do right as he construes the right in every case, one respected and beloved by his followers who would freely follow him into the jaws of hell, of Lieutenant Colonel G.A. Custer. Am I now writing? Do not think I am overdrawing the picture. The pen picture is true to life and is drawn not only from actual observation but from an experience that cannot mislead me. This effusion captured Custer's charisma, but it also underscored Kellogg's bias, shaped by proximity and perhaps gratitude for the access. In the 1870s press landscape, such glowing prose wasn't unusual, akin to modern embedded reporters echoing official narratives during conflicts, where objectivity often blurred with survival instincts on the trail. The praise flowed from Kellogg's pen as the expedition progressed, framing Custer not just as a commander but as a mythic figure pushing against the wilderness. Observers back east lapped it up, feeding the public's appetite for tales of manifest destiny clashing with indigenous resistance. Yet, this adulation ignored the Lakota perspective, where Custer's advances represented yet another violation of sacred lands, a detail lost in the reporter's enthusiastic prose. Kellogg's words built Custer's legend brick by brick, much like how social media today amplifies personalities through curated clips, turning real events into spectacle. His dispatches, wired back via couriers, painted the campaign as a heroic endeavor, downplaying the logistical snarls and growing intelligence on Sioux strength. This selective lens reflected the era's journalistic norms, where frontier stringers often traded neutrality for access, a trade-off that would soon reveal its fatal flaws as the column inched closer to confrontation. In another dispatch, Kellogg voiced optimism about the outcome, writing, "The hope is now strong, and I believe well-founded, that this band of ugly customers known as Sitting Bull's Band will be gobbled and dealt with as they deserve." This language echoed the prevailing U.S. sentiment, viewing the Sioux as obstacles to progress rather than sovereign nations defending homelands. The term ugly customers carried a dismissive tone, underscoring the cultural divide that fueled the conflict, where federal forces aimed to deal with resistance through overwhelming might. Kellogg's confidence mirrored the Army's underestimation of Lakota unity, a miscalculation rooted in reports that downplayed the warriors' numbers and resolve. Think of it as 19th-century intelligence failures, similar to modern ops where assumptions lead to quagmires, except here scouts' warnings about village sizes went unheeded amid the push forward. His words, published in Eastern papers, stoked public support for the campaign, framing it as a cleanup operation rather than an incursion into treaty lands, a narrative that ignored the Black Hills Gold Rush's role in sparking the tensions. As the column approached the Powder River country, Kellogg's reports maintained that upbeat edge, predicting a swift resolution against what he saw as scattered bands. This expectation aligned with Custer's aggressive style, where speed and surprise were key. But it overlooked the strategic acumen of leaders like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, who had gathered thousands in response to the intrusions. The irony bites here. Kellogg, the observer, became part of the story he hyped, his prose contributing to the overconfidence that blinded the 7th to the gathering storm. In an age without real-time updates, these dispatches served as the public's window, shaping opinions from afar while the reality on the ground grew more precarious with each mile. Kellogg's final dispatch, sent on the 21st of June, sealed his place in the annals with unwitting prophecy. By the time this reaches you, we would have met and fought the Red Devils with what result remains to be seen. I go with Custer, and will be at the death, that is in at the kill. The phrase at the death borrowed from fox hunting lingo, implying he'd witnessed the endgame, but history twisted it into a grim double entendre about his own fate. This message, scribbled amid camp routines, captured the expedition's bravado, referring to the Sioux as Red Devils in language typical of the time's racial rhetoric. Couriered back to Bismarck, it arrived just as events unfolded, turning a routine update into a haunting epitaph. Like a last tweet before a blackout, it hinted at the violence ahead without grasping its scale. A poignant reminder of how words outlive their writers in conflicts where hubris meets reality. The dispatch's tone reflected the column's mindset, eager for engagement after weeks of marching, yet it understated the risks posed by unified tribes defending their way of life. Kellogg's commitment to ride with Custer spoke to his dedication, prioritizing the story over personal safety in a profession where scoops demanded immersion. This final send-off, published posthumously, amplified the tragedy, as readers pieced together the outcome from fragmented reports, realizing the kill claimed the messenger too. In the broader Sioux Wars context, it exemplified how press narratives fueled escalation, portraying indigenous forces as foes to be vanquished rather than peoples resisting erasure. The 25th of June, 1876, dawned with Custer's column pushing hard into the Little Bighorn Valley, scouts whispering about a massive Lakota and Cheyenne village ahead, but the lieutenant colonel split his forces anyway, sending Reno south while he veered north with about 210 men. Kellogg, perched on a stubborn mule loaded with saddlebags of paper, pencils, and rations for 15 days, trailed the command party, his civilian status a wild card in this military sprint. The air hummed with anticipation, dust kicking up from hooves as Custer aimed for a surprise flank, ignoring reports of thousands of warriors united under Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, a coalition forged from broken treaties and Black Hills intrusions. Kellogg's role here was observer, not fighter, yet the pace exposed the gap between press ambition and battlefield reality, like a 19th century embed journalist realizing the story's speed outruns the storyteller. Struggling to match Custer's swift advance, Kellogg borrowed spurs from interpreter Fred Gerard, clamping them on to prod the mule forward despite warnings to stick with the slower packs. He brushed off the advice, muttering about expecting interesting developments, a understatement that echoed his final dispatch's bravado, as if words could outrun arrows. The mule lagged anyway, separating him from the core group as they crested ridges overlooking the river, where the first shots cracked from Medicine Tail Coulee, Custer's failed ford attempt unraveling into chaos. Warriors swarmed, turning the charge into a retreat, and Kellogg vanished in the fray, likely one of the first cut down near the water, his notebook silent on the pandemonium that followed. This disconnection highlighted the irony of frontier reporting. Chase the action too closely, and it swallows you whole, much like today's drone footage capturing its own destruction in real-time conflicts. Kellogg never reached Last Stand Hill, where Custer's remnants made their desperate cluster amid swirling dust and gunfire, the hill becoming a graveyard for ambitions. Archaeological digs later pieced together the scatter, with bullets and bones marking frantic positions. But Kellogg's path ended earlier, perhaps in that initial river skirmish, underscoring how civilians like him, drawn by headlines, became collateral in a clash of cultures. The Lakota viewed it as defense of their lands, while Custer's men saw glory slipping away, a mismatch that left no room for neutral bystanders. Relief forces under General Terry and Colonel Gibbon reached the battlefield on the 27th of June, 1876, first linking with Reno's battered survivors on the bluffs, then fanning out to locate Custer's missing wing, the silence broken only by crows and the Missouri's distant flow. Amid the strewn dead, a detail combed ravines and high grass, uncovering horrors that confirmed the wipeout. Bodies stripped and mutilated in rituals of victory and retribution, a stark reminder of the Sioux War's brutality where no quarter was given or expected. Kellogg's remains surfaced in a deep gulch near the river ford, overlooked by initial sweeps, his civilian clothes a clue amid uniformed corpses, the scene a frozen tableau of overconfidence meeting indigenous resolve. The body bore the marks of swift violence, scalped, with one ear severed, possibly linked to his distinctive Napoleonic sideburns catching a warrior's blade, and otherwise less ravaged than others, suggesting he fell early, out of reach for full desecration as the fight pressed on. No arrows or bullets detailed in reports, but the position implied a quick end during the retreat from Medicine Tail Coulee, his mule likely bolting at the first volleys. This condition painted a picture of isolated demise, far from the heroic narrative spun later, like a forgotten footnote in a script where the lead actors hogged the stage, yet his presence amplified the loss's scope beyond soldiers. Identification came via those distinctive boots, rigged with a unique strap across the instep for better grip, a practical tweak that outlasted the man, allowing Gibbon's men to name him amid the anonymous dead. No wallet or papers survived, but the footwear matched descriptions from camp, turning a mundane detail into a lifeline for history. Ironic in an age when telegraphs sped news but couldn't prevent such ends. Buried hastily on site, like the rest, his grave marked the start of a legacy built on absence rather than accounts. The New York Herald stepped up posthumously, erecting a grave marker on the battlefield to honor Kellogg's service, while publisher James Gordon Bennett Jr. funneled financial aid to his daughters, starting with $2,000 and arranging $100 monthly for their aunt's care, plus $5,000 each upon maturity, securing the future Kellogg sought through his risky embed. This gesture transformed tragedy into provision, a quiet win amid national mourning, where Custer's fame overshadowed but press solidarity ensured the reporter's family escaped poverty's grip, like insurance payouts in modern war zones covering what valor couldn't utter. The Associated Press claimed the freelance Kellogg as their own, dubbing him the first AP reporter to die in the line of duty, a title that etched him into journalism's Hall of Martyrs, even if his affiliation was loose. This recognition amplified his story, turning a stringer's end into a symbol for the profession's perils, especially in conflicts where neutrality offers no shield, a nod to the embedded risks that persist today in hotspots from Ukraine to Gaza. In 1976, local media organizations in La Crosse, Wisconsin, unveiled a memorial plaque at Oak Grove Cemetery near his wife's grave, commemorating the centennial with bronze and stone, a hometown salute to the wanderer who never returned. Radio, television, and newspaper groups funded it, bridging his early Democrat days to eternal rest, a fitting capstone where personal roots met historical ripples. Kellogg's satchel, pencil, and eyeglasses landed in Washington's Newseum displays, artifacts whispering of unfinished dispatches, now preserved as relics of frontier journalism's raw edge. These items, alongside his diary held in North Dakota, offer tangible links to the era, inviting reflection on how tools of the trade outlive their users. Overall, Kellogg savored a posthumous glory absent in life, his death footnote ballooning into legend, proving that in the Sioux War's echo, obscurity flips to immortality when tied to Custer's fall, a dark twist where the messenger becomes the message. Kellogg chased Custer's spotlight into the Little Bighorn dust, only to vanish in a ravine, his dispatches silenced forever amid Sioux revenge. Posthumous glory crowned him a martyr, while the cavalry's hubris echoed as a national scar. The Sioux Wars remind us that fame's pursuit often buries the bystanders, rewriting personal tragedies into footnotes of empire. Subscribe to Histories and Native Tales for more unflinching frontier truths. Hit like and comment your take below.